if you got my newsletter last night, you saw this crazy story about a journalist activist who decided to go at the very conservative mayor of the town I live in. So the mayor, his name is John Huffman. Southlake, everybody wants to go after the town I live in because Tarrant County is the most conservative county in Texas. Southlake's one of the most conservative towns in Texas. And if they can flip this, then they think they can flip Texas. That's why everybody's been targeting Southlake. And so you have these longtime operatives here that have brought in these D-list journalists. Some restaurant reviewer, they brought in some dope from Houston to do a never-ending podcast about the same made-up accusations. And so the mayor tweeted a picture of Leah Thomas when they were all standing on the podium, and you had Leah Thomas, and then you had Emma Waiton, the second place winner, and then the third place winner, which Emma really was the first place winner. And then with it, he had a picture of the Strong Woman competition, the episode from South Park, a screenshot from that, where basically Randy Savage is competing as a woman and is standing on the first place podium. And so this restaurant reviewer named Anna Kaplan from Dallas Morning News, she's been targeting Southlake like crazy. And it's interesting that all of the stuff that these progressive activists say end up being her stories. Crazy how that's fed. That process. So he had this pro-woman tweet because he tweeted out this image, and she decided to accuse him of being anti-transgender. She said, Southlake mayor tweets anti-transgender strong woman meme. But what exactly is anti-transgender about it? Where's the anti aspect? The Dallas Morning News basically published the equivalent of a YouTube comment as a legitimate news story. And Kaplan is clearly not familiar with South Park. There was nothing anti about Huffman's tweet. And I absolutely abhor this idiotic, simplistic reductiveness that being pro-woman is somehow anti-something, which it's not. So on this point, Anna Kaplan is a science-denying liar, and the Dallas Morning News is publishing they're publishing sexist misinformation. So Huffman had tweeted, quote, "It's a fact that Leah Thomas is a biological male. It's a fact that it's profoundly unfair for Leah Thomas to be allowed to compete against female swimmers. Anyone who disputes these facts embraces the destruction of women's sports." And he said, "I will always stand up for girls across this country, including my own daughters, who have a right," he said, "to compete in their sports on a fair and level playing field." He said, "What sad commentary on our modern culture that any of what I'm saying is in any way controversial." And it's true. So this, it's true. It shouldn't even be controversial at all. In any respect, it shouldn't be controversial. There was audio of one of the winners, one of the women who, I'm pulling up her tweet because her account was suspended, so bear with me. So Rekha Gheorghi, she was a swimmer and she competed in the 500 freestyle at NCAA championships, and she was kicked out of her spot by Leah Thomas, and she said that it was unfair on Twitter, and they suspended her account. That's sexist if you want to have a discussion as to what is or isn't sexist. So, I'm looking at, this is just wild. And there was nothing anti about any of that. There was nothing anti about what Huffman said. Here's the problem. And I love the way that, and this is over at Swimming World magazine. Listen to this. This is why it's supremely unfair and anti-science. They write, quote, "The NCAA only required 1 year of hormone suppressant therapy for a transgender female to compete in women's sports. Thomas was eligible to race for the Quakers." And to be clear, Thomas has followed the rules. The problem is that NCAA's guidelines are based on outdated science and didn't account for the advantages of Thomas undergoing male puberty and significant testosterone production. A 6'3" frame, greater natural strength, larger hands and feet, enhanced lung capacity. None of these edges, for the record, can be fully mitigated. And that's true. If a biological female who's competing in this, by the way, were to create these advantages for herself, she'd be ineligible for competition. It is not equality to sacrifice women's sports at the altar of appeasing men who identify as women. That is a purposeful diminishment of women. Women's comfort and security is never considered by the people who claim to be champions of us. If a man identifies as a woman and feels uncomfortable using a men's restroom, he's accommodated with access to the women's restroom. But if we feel uncomfortable by a man, by the way, a man who only identify as a woman but still be attracted to women, using the women's restroom, those women are abused and demeaned. Our concerns are dismissed as just bigotry. I have a friend from college who was raped in college. She's a rape survivor, and she's a lifelong Democrat. Well, was. She shared that it's irrelevant to her how a biological man wants to identify. Those weren't the exact words that she used, but I can't exactly quote her in full because I'd get fined. But she says it doesn't matter how a man wants to identify because it doesn't direct his sexual behavior. And she said, it's terrifying and women feel vulnerable when men force themselves into women's spaces. And forced is the word that she used verbatim, and I think it's entirely appropriate. And this is why I don't look at any man, no matter how he identifies, who insists on competing in women's sports as a victim. Because we created our own sports leagues. I always talked about this. But here's the thing. We'd never look down on ourselves as victims. We used our own power to create our own sports. So why can't transgender athletes do the same? Why is it always women's sports that must be sacrificed? Men and women are different biologically, hormonally, physiologically, emotionally, and demanding that we as women deny the truth of our existence or alter our speech to accommodate men who want to identify as us, these are all non-starters. Respect is a two-way street, and bullying women and suppressing science doesn't play any part in a reasonable civilized discussion.